things turn up, like these pieces right here are examples of those that we don't know when they came to light. We know that basically they were from the probably Bolduc House or maybe Linden House across the street.
Okay.
And then this is from behind Francois Valley II, which is the little house kind of behind the property here that was the home of the second to last colonial era commandant.
Oh, okay.
And so person of means, half of the house is still there. And it was built in two sections, probably late 1780s and then early to mid 1790s.
Okay.
And just for context, some of the material culture stuff that came from the same levels as this.
Right.
Household refuse.
And you can tell it's definitely late or very early 19th century.
Okay, yeah.
Late 18th
Yeah.
to very early 19th.
Yeah.
And jaw harp, the musket side lock, the ubiquitous pipe stem,
Oh,
pipe
yes, yeah.
stems.
Yeah.
It's and then there is a little bit more of the 2017 dig over here. That some of the bigger pieces
Yeah.
and pieces that maybe look like somebody did a little bit
Yeah. Somebody was eating
butchering
some
on it.
ribs here.
Yeah,
Some big cattle rib.
Mm-hmm. And so boar.
Yeah, yeah.
Or
Lower tusk, yeah.
And then the other batch, which has not, I don't think has been cleaned as much as some of the other materials. This is actually from 2015, yes. And it was behind Bolduc,
Okay.
around, and we'll show you the locations where these came from, where we think the summer kitchen was.
Okay.
And one of the reasons that we think it may have been the summer kitchen was that out of 4 boxes of material from the test pits, 25% was, yes,
Okay, yeah. So they were eating.
eaten. Yeah, who was for dinner?
Yeah. Just from looking at the table out, there's a couple, and I know there's other stuff in the boxes and stuff, but there is like a difference. There's a lot of pigs here, there's more cattle over there, and there's more cattle from that. This is a lot of pieces of cattle and chicken that you get over in that bigger house too. So you guys might be able to do like a economic type thing, like to.
Well, one of the things we'd heard about Louis Bolduc was that he was raising hogs.
Okay, yeah.
And the valets, certainly Francois Valet's father ends up, one of the ways he gets his first sort of source of revenue was taking cattle from this part of the world down to the Arkansas Post.
Okay. All right.
So there's a history of them being more involved with cattle
Okay.
and Bolduc more involved with hogs.
Interesting. Okay.
Why, when, where, what, I don't know.
Pork is delicious, and
Yeah.
it's very easy to raise, so that's the other thing.
Yeah,
So, yeah.
and it's fairly efficient
Yes.
from a conversion standpoint.
Yeah, you just feed them your trash.
Feed their trash, and they do pretty well foraging on their own.
Especially around here. So.
Yeah, there's lots of.
And these are households from late 1780s, 1790s is when it's really flourishing.
Yeah, 1790s is when it's really flourishing because that's when they're adding on to their houses.
Okay, so
Yeah,
So
they're
we're
doing well at that point.
Okay,
Yeah,
alright.
so we're successful.
Okay.
1780s, we're really moving here because the river's flooded, and, you know, there's a lot of stuff going on worldwide. You've got the French Revolution starting, you've got the American Revolution, you've got all sorts of crazy stuff going on worldwide, and I suspect they're making money, but they're also in the midst of a lot of trauma because
Right.
the Mississippi floods, and they decide to relocate, and this is where they go because it's much higher ground.
The original village, which may date as early as 1730, certainly by 1750, is right down on the river,
Okay, all
about
right, that
3
makes
miles
sense.
that way.
All right,
Like
but it's
right-
way low, so that,
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
and-
really
Yeah.
right on the
In
river.
1785, there's a flood when it is said that it was such a great flood that people kept their boats from floating away by tying them off to their neighbors' chimney tops.
Yeah. You know,
Yeah, stories get
some
better.
pretty bad flooding now.
Yeah, it was a bad flood.
Yeah.
I mean, look at it now, you could easily,
Yeah.
were it not levee protected, you would be tying
Your
chimney-
boat off to your
to your
chimney's
chimney,
chimney
yeah.
top. But yeah, so late 1780s, they're starting to move up to this new village, and they're on higher ground, and logically by that time, it's interesting because when you talk about the cattle and pigs and chickens, they logically would be by that late shifting more to,
The cattle.
yeah, domestic animal rather than
Right. Hunting and
Hunting,
trapping, or, yeah.
yes.
There's some deer, there's a nice big deer, antler
Antler.
there.
Antler.
And there's a couple pieces around, and it looks like some of the stuff may have been worked even,
Mhm.
so it's,
Yeah.
you know, they could have been using it. So yeah, it'd be cool to see early on, see how.
The other thing that's kind of interesting about this group is Madame Vallée is reputed to be more of an Indian background. Not that she is Indian,
Right,
but
okay.
that she has assimilated more of their cultural ways.
Okay,
She's said to dress that way.
okay,
And one of the guests makes some comment about, my God, she'd never be accepted in Paris dressed this way. You know, that kind of a commentary, which means she's gone a little bit. She's also known as being, if you got sick, that's who you came to see in town. You
Okay.
came to see her.
all right,
So she may be doing other things with some of this stuff.
okay, cool.
Mm.
Well, yeah, I'll look at species
And her household
and
help may be doing more,
Yes.
you know, who knows?
counts, any worked bone, I'll mark, you know, make
Yeah.
sure to take account of it.
Okay.
Sizes, I'll age the animals that I can age, so they can look at, you know, slaughter patterns, for example. if they're-
Cool.
For like
Okay.
pigs especially, that's a pretty good one to
Yeah.
look
How
at. Yeah.
how young are we?
Well, how are they managing them too, you
Yeah.
know, like if it's a business versus a household context would have kind of a different reflection in the demographic profile that would sort of be reflected from the bones, so, yeah, cool. And then if we get into it, we can look at things like, we could do stable isotopic analysis on the bones to look at diet. So what were they eating the wheat, for example, or was it
Cool.
more of a sort of wilder diet, were these foraged animals, things like that?
That'd be really
Pretty
interesting to know.
Look at,
Because
yeah.
the rumor is that the Le Grand Champ, which is what they call the big field, it's French. big
Yes.
field, was supposedly sort of fenced off. So are we really keeping them out of there
It should
or,
be, yeah.
or not?
Yeah,
We
or,
maybe have a fenced area where we're keeping
right.
them.
Or are you foddering them with like, chaff or I don't know, something,
Yeah.
yeah, things like that might pop up.
So it'd be really interesting because I think that'll give us another view of who these people really are.
Yeah, yeah,
Which is, it's sort of ironic, the more we dig, the more we're like, so who were they?
yeah. The less
Are
you
they
know, the
really-
more you know, right?
Yeah,
Cool,
Yeah.
good.
Well, it's like, this has been an important part of kind of reevaluating what we understand about what their daily life and their economic relationships were like, for example. And again, this is.
Just
this
a
is-
selection, yeah.
Yeah, of things that turned up working in the garden, and yes, the ubiquitous bite, but there's also stuff like,
Doll's legs.
yes,
yeah, doll leg's pretty cute.
Chinese export porcelain from the 1790s.
Hmm.
So here they
Yeah.
are on the frontier,
Yeah,
the middle of nowhere, and they're still part of,
Yeah.
British transfer ware,
yeah.
pearlware. They're
Arrowhead, yeah.
Because there was a pre-contact
Site
with
there?
sites
Okay.
actually all around here.
Okay, yeah.
And,
So it's kind of fun.
yeah, that you realize these, French wine bottles and brandy bottles and fragments of olive jars from Spain and came to Naples, and you're going, wow, these people like to,
Metropolitan.
yeah, exactly. And they're interested in, when they're successful, showing off a little bit.
Yeah.
And it's not all clay marbles and sharp sticks.
Yeah, right.
Wearing,
It's not all utilitarian. There's a lot of
or
other stuff
wearing
going on.
dead animals for hats and
Right,
things like
right,
that.
yeah. I'm sure there was some of that.
Yeah, but it's much more complex than what the popular perception tends to be.
Did this start off as one of these sort of trapper?
No,
Areas
this
or
is
at all?
agriculture and
So
mining.
the whole thing is, so there were no sort of occupations before that were non-agricult, like non-Indigenous
American.
ones? Yeah, okay.
Mhm.
That's interesting.
Yeah, because there is, in the Le Grand Champ area, there are still some remnants of some mounds.
Okay,
Hmm.
So
okay.
there is, the
Yeah.
Indian culture has been here
For a long time, yeah.
long time. And of course, you're right on the river, so you're getting a lot of stuff happening.
But these were your first settlers?
These are the first settlers. They're really they start coming across to this side of the river, to the best of our knowledge, because there's a saline creek down a little bit, and there's the lead mines up a little bit.
Okay, so it's a good spot.
So, and then as far as I can figure from a river standpoint, this appears to have been maybe a little bit more of an accretion side of the river. So it ends up being really fertile, rich ground.
Yeah.
And that's going to give them a lot more reason to farm over here.
Okay, yeah.
There's a little bit of hunting, a little bit of fur trade,
Sure,
but
yeah.
mostly these guys are entrepreneurs, are looking at making money off the mines,
land
the
and
salt,
yeah.
and the farming.
They're trading.
Yeah,
And
that explains kind of some of the.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so explain, really?
Yeah, right.
yeah,
And I think this is of course one of my
Yeah.
fun, it's toothbrush.
mm,
I'd love to get that in my home now.
Right?
I'd
but
also like to be the guy putting the little hog hairs in it.
It's a job.
yeah, sure.
Somebody's got to do it.
Yeah, but the Bolduc materials, these are from behind a house that was a merchant and a broker. Yes, he also owned some land. He had shares in a mine and shares in a salt works and a maple orchard and
Okay.
or maple grove. But he's,
He's a merchant.
He's a leading
yeah.
member of the society that exists here and.
Early investors.
Right.
Yeah.
Right, and then, like I say, Valley is a civic leader as well as an entrepreneur, and they're,
And his father's really, so Francois is Francois II.
Okay.
So he's the eldest son of the guy who really kind of almost is the founder of the state.
Mm.
He's been here a long time, he's been very successful. One of the stories told about him is when the Spanish are coming up in 1760s, they stop in St. Genevieve and they visit with Francois. When they get there, they're out of money, they're out of food, they're out of bullets. They're done. And he restocks them, feeds them, and they go, fine, you guys got it, we're gonna go on up the river, which is how St. Louis ends up
Okay.
kind of being settled,
Okay.
because 1764.
Yeah, that was pretty close, so.
So, there you are, that's how really St. Louis gets going. And then, of course, St. Louis sort of takes off because it's really at the confluence
Right.
of all those rivers.
Yes.
And this was a confluence of rivers back in its day, but,
Well, especially when you're attached to the mine and attached to other sort of
Yeah.
things, yeah, so.
so it made sense back in its day, but it never really took off and thrived the way St. Louis ended up.
Right.
But St. Louis was also known as Pack Court, meaning they were short of bread.
They
So,
needed to bring
So-
them here.
Well, St. Genevieve is always shipping them bread. And then, of course, in 1780, when the battle happens, St. Genevieve ships 60 guys upstream to help fight the Revolutionary battle up there. And had those 60 guys not shown, the battle would have not been won.
Huh.
So
It plays its,
it has a really important little role that doesn't really get talked about because it never
got big,
got big,
Yeah,
so it
yeah.
could promote its story. So
Right.
it's really sort of sad.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think in sort of the larger story of America, we don't really talk about food production, and we see these sort of farming areas as these big empty spaces where there's nothing, but it's like without that, you can't feed anybody else, so it's, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we forget that we all eat.
Yeah, right, every day, well, hopefully.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and there's also the the idea of the frontier and individual farmsteads and which isn't entirely true even in the American areas, but here it's definitely not true where you have the big common field.
Right.
And it's really the concept that grew up
Communities.
of, the urban frontier.
Right.
That they taught us about when we were undergraduates a long, long time ago. But one of the other things you might find interesting, we do have a little exhibit that we just put in about hunting, fishing, and gathering
Oh, cool.
for wild food in the late colonial era and continuing on as a tradition even still
Yeah.
later and today. And we had help in putting it together from a gentleman who is anthropologist but also he's also an Osage elder.
Oh,
So
okay, yeah.
that was a really interesting perspective on the story that, and one of the things we realized was learning or coming to understand how much people of European backgrounds picked up from the Native
They
Americans
learned,
in
yeah.
those processes.
Right.
And
And also, the things we brought, so my dissertation is on pigs, so I always go back to the pigs. But it's interesting because now that I sort of know the sequence of when these people came here with these animals, these pigs might be the ancestors of the wild pigs that give us so much trouble in the state today because they were brought here, they're not endemic to this region. So it's kind of this interesting, if these guys got out, that's what we're seeing out there. We're seeing his old pigs, all his hogs out there,
One pregnant female escaped.
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty much all you need.
Yeah.
They're pretty good at
They're
living out
very
there,
good.
so.
Yeah, and I know it's interesting, I get some of the Missouri Conservationist publications, and, I think, I can't remember what the number was that they caught
Oh my gosh, it's so
and
many.
killed this year. It's phenomenal.
It's not working anywhere. In
No.
none of the places that, you can't
So-
kill enough of them.
So when did they start bringing pigs into Upper Louisiana?
I mean, I have no idea. That's the thing. I'll take a. I work mostly in the old world, so
Yeah.
most of my stuff is China, Europe, and the Near East. But I can take a look.
Well,
pigs
But
don't
there's
tend
more
to
of
move
a
that
China
much.
story here than not.
Right, yeah. I mean, the porcelain is coming in.
Yeah, so it's hard to say what comes from where.
Yeah, it is. It is. And it's hard to know, I did, one of the historical sites that I did when I was an undergraduate was a railway site in Nevada. I'm from Nevada. And so you had the different camps, and you could see through the food what people were eating, what the Chinese workers were eating, what cuts of meat they were having versus the people who owned the boarding houses and things like that. So it was so you can get a lot at what people, what their social status was, what their preferences were just by looking at their
And it's
dumpy
also,
bones.
just having grown up in Europe, I found it was really interesting when I came to this country, we were very picky about cuts.
Yeah.
And in Europe it was sort of like, well, it's
Yeah.
edible, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's good, yeah.
You can chew it and swallow it?
You can chew it and swallow it, and you put the right seasoning on it, and you cook it the right way. It was
Yeah.
really darn good.
Yeah. Organ meat is something that Americans don't eat very much.
Yeah, Americans totally don't get organ meats, and yet organ meats are really delicious.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, so my family, I'm from many places, right? My family's from Spain. I was born in Spain. So like we all eat, like, you know, all the parts of the pig, like tail to snout. Like it's like, yeah, that all goes into something.
The only thing we don't eat is the oink.
Yeah, right. Well, yeah, exactly.
And it's hard to put it in the pot.
You know, and the nose itself is probably ground up and put in somewhere.
Oh yeah.
So the oinker is eaten. So, you know, it'd be interesting to see like what they're throwing out, what they're cutting up. You know, if the American love of steak emerged here or somewhere else, you know, like where do these cuts sort of, you know, originate?
So it'll be interesting. Yeah. Well, you're going to bring a lot to the table, so thank you. That's
no
a lot
problem.
of fun.
It'll be good. I mean, there's a good amount too, so I can get students involved, university to work on it. And,
good. Well, because if we can help it become a learning situation for
Totally.
somebody else, that's, I mean, maybe spark a little interest in somebody going, okay, so
Want to come out?
why is it that they were eating this particular whatever?
Right, exactly. Yeah. So, you know, I think it's, you know, potentially we can talk about it too. I mean, it could be a good project for somebody who's doing like an undergraduate thesis, like a final, like a capstone project, things like that. We could get somebody to get way into it. And, go
totally
deep,
get into
it. Yeah.
I'm also seeing programming in our future with
Cool.
Yeah.
combined lectures and cooking.
Awesome. Awesome.
Yeah. And I think, you know, if you get ideas of things we can do with it,
Yeah.
please know that we want to play.
Cool. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I'll think
We're
about that.
here to not just say, well, this is, you know, bones and we
Here
really
are
want to
some
know.
things they ate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're here to say, where can this go?
Yeah. What can
How
you
many
tell
different
us?
ways can we take it and, you know, approach it somewhat logically of, okay, well, let's go here and then we can delve into that and then we can, but, you know, let's have fun.
Yeah. Let's see what we can get out of it. You know. So I'll probably start with just sort of a general analysis, like, you know, give you guys some patterns or whatnot,
Yeah.
and then start again like thinking about what else could we think about doing, like if we could do, you know, what kinds of methods we want to apply for it. And the nice thing about my attachment to WashU is that we get access to a lot of their resources. I work in the Stable Isotope Lab, so if we do any of that analysis, it doesn't cost any money. So that's great. Things like that. So it's and there's always, you know, students looking for stuff to do. So that's time.
And that's, you know, what a great resource.
Yeah, it's lovely.
It's great for them to have the exposure to the real stuff.
Yeah, totally. I'm not allowed to bring any of my things back from China for my dissertation work, so I never got a chance to sort of like have the materials like in a tape. Like it was always like tiny little, you know, cramped little spaces. Like, okay, I'm gonna do this before I go back to the U.S. kind of thing, you know. So.
Where in China were you?
I work in Inner Mongolia, so I work in northern China, and then I have
It's
another.
gotta be fascinating.
It is. It's pretty crazy. It's fascinating in all kinds of ways, bureaucratic to archaeological. And then I have another site in the south, it's like total extreme in Yunnan, which is my dissertation is really, really early sites. We're looking at 9,000 to about 7,000 years ago. We're looking at like really early pig management that they're doing up there, and how that's where changes.
So we've been eating pig a long time.
Oh yeah, we've been eating pig since the paleo, since before we were humans. Like before, when we were, you know, since our.
But isn't
genetic
goat
existence.
the #1 consumed meat?
What is?
Goat?
Goat? I don't.
Are you
I think
not-
it's pork. I think well, chicken and then pork. If you look at like sort of per head, by weight, I think it's pork. Goat is more consumed in certain regions, whereas particularly where they don't eat pork. But you know, China consumes something like I think it's like 6 billion pigs a year, or some insane number of animals.
A lot of pigs.
We give a lot of the pigs that we raise here in the U.S. to Mexico and to China, so there's kind of interesting. Yeah, we don't eat enough, and then they don't produce enough, so like we have to. They take.
But that's okay.
Yeah, no, it's
That's
great.
okay.
It's
That's
fine.
part of what makes trade interesting.
Yeah. And the breeds of pigs all have like this whole international connection,
Yes.
like different like where sort of Chinese endemic breeds ended up in Europe and for what reason,
Well-
and things like that. So.
I mean, isn't part of one of the pigs that I talked about a lot back in my days when I worked for a little company called Ralston Purina
Yeah.
was the Landras race?
Oh yeah. Yep. Yeah.
And don't they have like another rib or something?
They have a couple random features, and because they're like a genetic like mishmash of a lot of different things that
okay.
give them sort of a fattierness. You know, they actually have Chinese pig DNA, so that was brought like I think in the early 1800s, I think, or maybe a little earlier. They brought Meishan pigs into Europe because they were those big fat ones, and so then they sort of crossbred them with the European ones, and then made like much fattier, bigger pigs for us. So
Interesting.
yeah, there's a whole, you know, and it's, you know, I don't think that people have really done the genetics or as much of the genetics on the American sort of breeds of pigs, or like what's around, like the wild ones, because it would be, it's a story of globalization right there, like looking at what showed up here. Because you've got Spaniards bringing in pigs, you have the French bringing in pigs, you have the British bringing in pigs, and then you have people starting these game reserves and they're bringing in wild pigs from like Germany and stuff, and then they escape, and then, yeah, so.
And then you have the.
And now we have this problem, yeah.
And they're wily.
Yes, they are. I mean, my pigs, my, you know, 7,000-year-old pigs, I'm pretty sure they started on their path to domestication because they were raiding fields of millet, early millet production that was happening there. So,
Yeah.
you know, then people were like, oh, we should eat this too.
Well,
Raise
you know,
this too.
and this also may have some connection to the stockades around the, you know, because town lots, your main farming is out in the Grand Champ, but you have a
Gardens.
kitchen garden,
Yeah,
and the practice seems to have been to put up stockades around the properties.
Keep out.
And everyone goes, oh,
Just
it's
before
for
the invention of
defense.
the electric
And
fence.
Defense
they're-
from animals, you know,
Yes,
deer and
exactly.
pigs, really,
Deer and
like, you
pigs,
know,
and-
they eat a lot of stuff, so.
And,
Yeah, and if you're raising your own pigs, you don't want them coming into your, like, if you're doing, you know, what you get in like lots of villages, like early, even today, is you get free range pigs, they're just sort of like the city's pigs, and everybody kind of gives them food, and they eat everybody's garbage, and they sort of just roam around the village, and then you eat them when you need to. And so you have these systems where it's like, well, now I have to keep my stuff like away from these, you know, roaming little hogs about, so. And that's probably not what was happening here, because I think, like, well, maybe in the beginning, we have no idea.
Yeah.
But if there's a hog raising operation, I don't think he'd want his pigs roaming around too far away, yeah.
Well, because they will tend to move on.
Yeah, they don't need us.
They totally don't need us. They're actually pretty smart.
Yeah.
They're an interesting animal.
Well,
Yeah, so
Yeah, we'll go look at
the hunting.
yeah, we'll take a
I
look
think
at that.
That's pretty cool,
and-
yeah.
Okay. And and we can always finish with speaking of smart pigs, the story about when God was creating all the animals, and you know this one, don't you?
I don't know, I don't think
Okay,
so.
and he was speaking to each species as he created them, and when he came to pigs, I've got good news and bad news. The pig said, well, what's the good news? You shall be among the most intelligent of all animals.
Oh.
Wow, that's great, Lord. Then what's the bad news? You're going to be really tasty.
Yeah. Fact.
All right.
So,
With that,
okay.